Welcome to Voyage Daily Tech, the most important news personalized for you every day, supported by Voyage.com.
Today we're sharing 5 stories. First, how a black market in China is repairing banned Nvidia H100 chips fueling a smuggling operation now targeting the next generation B200s. Second, Intel's CEO Lip-Bu Tan warns the company may quit advanced chipmaking if it can't land a customer for its 14A process, risking a $100 billion investment. Third, we'll cover how Christina Chapman's laptop farms helped North Korean agents get hired at 300 US companies, funneling $17 million to their weapons program. Fourth, the FDA is banning colors like red dye. Number 3, forcing WK Kellogg to reformulate Fruit Loops and sending scientists to volcanoes for natural dyes. And fifth, why Meta is killing all political and social issue ads in the EU, a response to the new TTPA regulation that could silence activist groups. The most unexpected news in the tech world today has to be a business that, in theory, shouldn't even exist, but is now booming in China. The product? Banned American technology. We're talking about a thriving black market industry for repairing the most advanced Nvidia AI chips. The very same H100 and A100 GPUs the US government has forbidden from being sold to its top tech rival. The scale is staggering. One repair shop in Shenzhen now fixes up to 500 of these banned AI chips every single month, charging up to 20,000 yuan per repair. And they aren't alone. Around a dozen of these boutique repair firms have sprung up. And it's an incredible display of technical skill. Because these firms don't have official schematics or diagnostic tools from Nvidia, they have to reverse engineer the entire process. Technicians are using highly sophisticated methods like decapsulation, which means carefully removing the protective casing to expose the chip's internal structure. From there, they use advanced imaging to map out the microscopic components and figure out what went wrong. They're sourcing replacement parts by either salvaging them from other broken chips or tapping into Shenzhen's massive electronics markets. It's a high-tech chop shop for the world's most advanced processors. This all points to one unavoidable conclusion. A massive underground smuggling operation is successfully funneling these high-end chips into the country. These smuggling networks are incredibly sophisticated. They exploit gaps in the global supply chain, often using countries in Southeast Asia like Malaysia and Thailand as transshipment points to reroute the chips and obscure their final destination. The demand is so high and the chips are being used so intensely, running 24/7 to train powerful AI models, that they're starting to break down, creating this lucrative, illicit repair market. The core conflict is escalating. The repair boom is now so blatant that US lawmakers are scrambling, introducing bills to track these chipsets after they're sold. The concern is real, especially with reports showing that even the Chinese government and military have acquired these banned Nvidia chips. This is a classic example of the sanctions paradox in action. While the US export bans were meant to slow China's tech progress, they have inadvertently fueled an incredible drive for self-sufficiency and resilience. This repair market is a perfect example, showing how local industries can adapt and innovate to get around restrictions. Nvidia's official position is that using these restricted products without their support is a non-starter, both technically and economically. But on the ground in China, it's a completely different story. Actually, Nvidia tried to sell a less powerful sanctioned version of its chip, the H20, to China. But major players like Alibaba and Tencent reportedly showed little interest, preferring the real deal, even if it's smuggled, or turning to domestic alternatives like Huawei's Ascend platform. And here's where it gets interesting. The market isn't just surviving, it's evolving. Smugglers are no longer just focused on the H100. They're now moving on to Nvidia's next generation B200 chips, the new top-of-the-line hardware. The price for a single server loaded with these smuggled B200s in China, over 3 million yuan. The demand is not slowing down, it's accelerating. So what's the upshot of all this? Well, there's a fascinating dilemma here. While this constant flow of smuggled top-tier chips provides a short-term solution, some experts argue it might actually be a crutch. It could be delaying China's long-term goal of true self-sufficiency by reducing the urgency to switch over to and perfect their own homegrown AI chips. It's a complex situation where a black market solution might be undermining a national strategic goal. Speaking of high-stakes corporate maneuvers, Intel just dropped a bombshell that could reshape the global tech landscape. They may have to get out of the advanced chip manufacturing business. And this isn't just about one company's balance sheet. If Intel pulls back, the United States could lose its only domestic manufacturer of the most advanced semiconductors. This would dramatically increase US reliance on Taiwan's TSMC, which makes over 90% of the world's most advanced chips, creating a massive national security vulnerability. That's right. The company synonymous with chip innovation has warned investors its entire future in cutting-edge chipmaking depends on one thing: securing a major customer for its next-generation 14A process. Without one, they could shut the whole thing down. So who are these potential customers? We're talking about the titans of tech, giants like Apple, Nvidia, or major cloud providers. The challenge is that these companies already have deep, successful relationships with TSMC. To win them over, Intel has to offer more than just a good chip. They need superior performance, competitive pricing, and ironclad guarantees on supply. It's the highest stakes sales pitch in the industry. This historic ultimatum comes from new CEO Lip-Bu Tan, who is making a radical break from the past. He stated that future investment in their most advanced technology will be based only on confirmed customer commitments. The message is clear: no customers, no factory. What's fascinating is that this isn't just a business decision. It's a complete re-engineering of Intel's corporate DNA. For decades, Intel was a fortress. They designed their own products and built them in their own factories. Now, they're trying to become a customer-first service provider, integrating feedback from day one. It's a huge cultural shift from being a product king to a service partner. This isn't just a strategy shift, it's a potential earthquake. For decades, Intel has been a steward of Moore's Law. It is the only US company capable of making these advanced computing chips. This warning comes on the heels of major layoffs and a wider than expected quarterly loss, signaling a company at a critical turning point. However, if you zoom out, you'll see the ultimate irony at play. For years, Intel has been spending billions to build up its foundry business to compete with the manufacturing titan TSMC. If this new plan fails, Intel could become completely dependent on the very company it sought to challenge. This would create a staggering power shift, putting Intel at a huge competitive disadvantage to its arch-rival AMD, which has a long and successful relationship with TSMC. Now, get this. A spot in TSMC's production line isn't guaranteed. TSMC prioritizes its biggest and most loyal customers. In 2023, Apple took up a massive 25% of its capacity, with Nvidia at 11% and AMD at 7%. As a new and rival customer, Intel could find itself at the back of the line, waiting for capacity while its competitors get first dibs on the best technology. The financial stakes are immense. Intel is sitting on roughly $100 billion of chip-making equipment. If they are forced to halt development, the company warns of significant material impairments to those assets. And significant material impairments is corporate speak for a potentially massive loss. So what happens to all that gear? History shows that dozens of chip fabs have been closed or repurposed over the last decade. While some equipment can be sold on a secondary market, an advanced EUV machine can still be worth 60 to 70% of its original price. After 5 years, we're talking about a complex process of decommissioning and selling off assets worth billions. The new CEO admits they are learning from past mistakes. The question is, did they learn in time, or could the one-time undisputed king of chips soon be forced to rely on its biggest rivals just to survive? From the rarefied air of chip fabs to the shadowy world of cybercrime, our next story shows how technology is being weaponized in a completely different way. An American woman was just sentenced to 8 years in prison for a scheme that funneled $17 million directly to North Korea's nuclear weapons program. How? By stealing American identities to get North Korean agents hired at over 300 US companies, including Fortune 500 giants like Nike. The rise of remote work has, believe it or not, created a massive blind spot in corporate security. Companies are now using flexible rules for identity verification, like checking an I-9 form over a live video call. But this case shows how easily that can be exploited. The North Korean operatives used stolen US identities, and because no one was physically present, these major corporations had no idea they were hiring ghosts. The woman, Christina Chapman, orchestrated the entire plot from her home. Investigators say she ran sophisticated laptop farms in Arizona and Minnesota. So the thing is, These so-called laptop farms are more than just a bunch of computers in a room. Chapman was using a technique called RDP tunneling, which stands for Remote Desktop Protocol. Think of it like a secret encrypted tunnel. The North Korean agent connects to the laptop in Chapman's house through this tunnel. To the company's IT department, all the work looks like it's coming from a legitimate employee working from home in Arizona. In reality, the person typing is thousands of miles away, completely bypassing the company's digital security fences. She would receive company-issued computers, log in to make it appear the workers were physically in the United States, and then help the North Korean operatives connect remotely from other countries. The operation was so massive, she even had to hire her own staff to manage the dozens of laptops. This wasn't just a simple fraud. According to US officials, the $17 million generated was sent straight to the North Korean Munitions Industry Department, the same organization that handles ballistic missile and weapons production. And this is part of a much larger state-sponsored strategy. After all, North Korea has an army of thousands of highly skilled IT workers. Their entire job is to lie, cheat, and steal their way into freelance jobs around the world. US Treasury officials have confirmed that these operatives can earn up to $300,000 a year each, and that money is funneled directly back to the regime to fund its weapons programs. In fact, in one recent year, North Korean cyber actors stole over $1 billion in virtual currency alone. The US Attorney for Washington, D.C. delivered a chilling warning, stating, "North Korea is not just a threat to the homeland from afar, it is an enemy within." They added, "The call is coming from inside the house. If this happened to these big banks, to these Fortune 500 brand name quintessential American companies, it can or is happening at your company." But Chapman's defense had a surprising claim. She insisted she had no idea she was working with North Koreans. Prosecutors pointed to 35 separate packages she sent over an 8-month period to Dandong, China, a city right on the North Korean border. Interestingly enough, the FBI has a framework for people like this. They call them money mules, and they fall into 3 categories: unwitting, witting, and complicit. Unwitting mules genuinely don't know they're part of a crime. But as you move to witting or complicit, there's an element of willful ignorance or direct participation. The question here is whether someone could really be that unaware while managing a multi-million-dollar international operation from their home. The FBI was blunt, saying that even an adversary as sophisticated as the North Korean government can't succeed without the assistance of willing US citizens. This case proves that the front line of national security isn't just overseas, it's inside the corporate offices of Main Street, America. The story doesn't end with a prison sentence, however. Now, there are over 300 companies that have to face the fallout. They could be hit with massive regulatory fines for failing to properly verify their employees. Even worse, the real US citizens whose identities were stolen could sue these companies for negligence. This case is a brutal wake-up call that a simple hiring mistake can have consequences for national security, corporate liability, and the lives of innocent people. From corporate security to consumer safety, big companies are facing pressure to change from all sides. Our next story is about a huge shake-up in the food industry, which began when an FDA commissioner stated, "For the last 50 years, American children have increasingly been living in a toxic soup of synthetic chemicals." What he's referring to are synthetic food dyes, many of which are derived from petroleum, the same raw material used for gasoline and plastics. A growing body of research has linked them to concerns like hyperactivity in children and other potential health risks, which is why this is such a monumental shift. Following that statement, the agency banned the infamous red dye, number 3, and is now pushing to phase out other petroleum-based synthetics like yellow dyes 5 and 6. The goal for the entire food industry to voluntarily eliminate them by 2026, this has sent giants like Nestle, Kraft Heinz, and General Mills scrambling. WK Kellogg has already announced it's reformulating its cereals and will stop launching any new products with the targeted artificial colours starting in January 2026. Protesters had even gathered outside its headquarters, demanding changes to cereals like Fruit Loops. The challenge, however, is that replacing these colours is a massive undertaking. Natural dyes often have a shorter shelf life and can be less vibrant. And the difficulty lies in the chemistry. Natural colorants are incredibly sensitive. Research shows that some natural blue pigments, for example, can break down at temperatures above 45 degrees Celsius. That's just 113 degrees Fahrenheit. They can also degrade significantly after just 24 hours of exposure to normal light. This means a shorter product shelf life, which could lead to more food waste. On top of that, there are concerns about new unstudied allergens from these novel biological sources. One CEO warns that when brands switch to less vivid natural colors, the product often does poorly in the market and customers complain. And the clock is ticking. A food scientist warns that with everyone rushing to make the change, the industry is heading for a massive production bottleneck. This isn't just a theory. We've seen this play out before. For example, a few years ago, the price of natural color from elderberries fluctuated by over 20% because of crop failures in Europe. And political unrest in Peru caused a 40% supply shortage of carmine, a red dye made from insects, forcing manufacturers to scramble for alternatives. This is the definition of a fragile supply chain. Her stark assessment, we don't necessarily have all these colors available, but we have 10 months to get that right. So where will the new colors come from? The answer is unexpected. Scientists are literally climbing volcanoes in the Caribbean to find microalgae that produce a brilliant food-safe blue. What they do next is straight out of science fiction. They're not just harvesting algae, they're using advanced biotech to scale it up. One key method is called precision fermentation. Think of it like a brewery, but instead of yeast making beer, they use genetically tuned microorganisms in giant steel vats to produce vibrant, stable colors. Some are even using CRISPR gene editing technology to boost the pigment production in these tiny algae by over 50 times. It's a biocolor factory. Other companies are sourcing pigments from carrots and potatoes grown specifically for their intense color content. This isn't just a health trend, it's a high-stakes corporate race creating a new global power map. We're shifting from a market based on petroleum to one based on biology. This has kicked off a global rush for intellectual property, with companies filing patents on everything from the microbial strains they discover to the processes they use to grow them. This raises serious ethical questions about bioprospecting, making sure that the countries and indigenous communities where these unique resources are found are compensated fairly and not just having their natural heritage exploited. The final question is, in this mad dash to change, who wins and who gets left behind on the grocery store shelf? This brings up a fascinating question. What does natural even mean anymore? The FDA doesn't have a strict legal definition. So if a color originally came from a microbe on a volcano but is now mass-produced in a lab using gene editing, is it still natural? This ambiguity could lead to a new wave of natural washing where we, the consumers, are left trying to figure out what's real and what's just marketing. We were just talking about how US regulations are forcing the food industry to innovate. Well, across the Atlantic, a new EU law is causing two of the biggest tech giants to retreat entirely. In a move that caught many by surprise, Meta is about to hit the kill switch on all political advertising across the entire European Union. Starting in early October 2025, the company will no longer allow any political, electoral, or social issue ads on its platforms in the EU, and the impact goes far beyond just politicians. That term, social issue ads, is incredibly broad. Meta itself defines it as including topics like health, tax policy, environmental issues, and civil and social rights. This means that nonprofits, human rights organizations, and climate activists who rely on these platforms for awareness and fundraising could be silenced right alongside political parties. This isn't a small policy change, it's a full-on retreat from a massive market, and it follows an identical move made by Google. With both Meta and Google out of the game, it creates a huge power vacuum. Where does all that campaign money go? You might think of platforms like TikTok, but they actually have a strict global ban on paid political ads. Then there's X, which has gone back and forth on its policies. This could push campaigns toward less regulated, more opaque platforms like Telegram, which could ironically undermine the EU's entire goal of creating more transparency. The core of this conflict is a new European Union law called the Transparency and Targeting of Political Advertising Regulation, or TTPA. The law was created to fight disinformation and foreign interference in elections across all 27 member countries, and it has serious teeth. The EU is threatening non-compliant companies with fines of up to 6% of their total annual turnover. For a company the size of Meta, that's a potential penalty in the tens of billions of dollars. This really helps to understand their motivation. While we don't know the exact figures, political advertising is a very small slice of Meta's total revenue. So, from a purely financial standpoint, the company is choosing to sacrifice a small amount of income to avoid the risk of a catastrophic multi-billion-dollar fine. It's a classic risk management decision. But Meta isn't just backing down. The company's going on the offensive with a statement that creates a whole new level of drama. They claim the EU's rules introduce significant operational challenges and legal uncertainties. Behind that corporate speak is a serious technical problem. The TTPA law demands an incredible level of detail: who paid for an ad, how much they spent, and exactly who was targeted. In fact, researchers, including a team from Mozilla, have already shown that Meta's own ad library API is buggy and unreliable, sometimes giving different results for the exact same search. Meeting the EU's strict standards would require a massive, expensive overhaul of their existing tech. Then came the bombshell. Meta stated that these new regulations will ultimately hurt Europeans. Their argument is that the law undermines the ability of advertisers to reach voters and limits the public's access to comprehensive information. So you have a massive standoff. The EU is trying to rein in the power of big tech, and in response, two of the world's biggest platforms are choosing to exit the political arena entirely. What's so significant here is that for years, the EU has set global standards for tech regulation. It's a phenomenon known as the Brussels effect. But this unified withdrawal signals a potential new playbook. Instead of complying, big tech might just start abandoning markets they see as too difficult. This all begs the question, is this a calculated power play by big tech to protest regulation, or are we about to witness a fundamental shift in how political speech happens online for hundreds of millions of people?
That's it for today on Voyage Daily Tech. Follow, share, and stay tuned for daily updates coming your way tomorrow.